one of the examples Kant gives in his analysis is, he says you have to return borrowed goods. And for Kant, returning borrowed goods comes no matter what. If your neighbor came to you and they said, if you went to your neighbor and said, hey, can I borrow your gun? I want to go hunting and I know you have a good gun. I want to try it out. Can I borrow it, right? I mean, the other day I was actually, when I was a kid, was at swim lesson, two of the parents next to me were talking, and they were talking about this gun. He said it's kind of hard to pull, and was sort of, talking about the nature of the weapon, as I was kind of just listening as I was sitting there doing something, and just waiting on my kid, really. And, so he said, oh, you can borrow it and test it out, right? So suppose he loans him this gun. And the next day he comes back and he says, hey, I need that gun back. And he says, oh, okay, sure, no problem. Why do you need it back? And he says, well, because I'm going to kill somebody. I'm mad, right? Now, most of us would think that if they just said that, we have an obligation not to give it back. But for Kant says your obligation is to do these things. Like, can I borrow things and not return them? No, that's self-defeating. So if you borrow goods, your obligation is to return borrowed goods when asked to return them. Because if people didn't return borrowed goods when asked to return them, then nobody would loan them the things in the first place. And so the case is that if somebody asks you to return a borrowed weapon, you have to return it, no matter what they're planning to do. But for Kant says, the consequence of this action is not really my concern. What he does with this weapon isn't his concern. My only obligation is to do what I'm supposed to, which is to return the borrowed good. Now, what Kant says is the example I like to use is, suppose one day you're sitting in your house and you're sitting there and all of a sudden you get a knock on the door. And the knock comes and you go, oh, hello, who's there? And you go to the door and it's Jill. And Jill says, help. Sue is trying to kill me. She's chasing me down the street. Can you hide me? And you say to yourself, well, if I hide a person, would it be self-defeating if everybody else did it? I don't see any self-defeating. Sure, you can be hidden. And so they hide in the room, right? And so you hide them. And then the person, that you go back to watching TV or whatever, they're hiding in the closet of the back room. And Sue comes along and she knocks on the door. And she says, hey, have you seen Jill? And she's holding a weapon and saying, hey, I want to kill Jill. Have you seen her? Now, you cannot lie. Why? Because if you lie, then you are committing a crime. You're not a crime, but you are in fact violating your ethics. You're violating the rule, which is to tell the truth. And so, you're violating that rule. And so if you lie to Sue, then you have done something immoral. And so you have an obligation to tell her the truth. If she goes in and kills Jill, that's on Sue. That's not on you. Your only obligation is to tell the truth. So suppose, for example, you decide to lie. And Jill, knowing you're a up-and-standing, honest person, Kantian all the way through, realizes that. So she crawls out the back window of the house and decides she's going to run back around the house and cut across the front yard while Sue is going into the house, and she's going to get away. But instead, you lie. And so when Sue turns around, she sees Jill running across the lawn, shoots her and kills her. Now not only is Jill dead, but you have lied. And you are responsible for that now. Okay? But if you had told the truth and Jill had died, then Jill died. Jill's going to die or not die. It's not really your decision to make on that case. Jill is going to die or not based on what Sue does. Your obligation is to tell the truth. Now, most of us realize that in certain cases, like returning borrowed goods, lying to save somebody's life, we think that that's okay. But the case is, Kant says no. Your obligation is to do what's right. Follow the categorical imperative. Don't let the hypothetical imperative get in the way. Now, in this case, it does bring up the fact that you could, when Sue comes to the door, say, Sue, I'm not going to tell you, and maybe Sue would shoot you. But that would be considered what we would call a supererogatory act. You went above and beyond the good. In this case, you didn't lie, but you also did, because you're under no obligation to tell Sue this fact. It's just you can't lie to Sue. You can say, I know, but I'm not going to tell you, or Sue, I'm not going to tell you, but you cannot openly lie, because lying is wrong. You can try to tell her, I'm not going to tell you, but you can't just lie.